These sessions are based on the book The Messiah Codes Unsealed.
Hi, this is Luis once more. Welcome to the Messiah Codes. This is session 11, The Mystery of the Third Temple, part 4. Today we will try to decode when in 2030 the Third Temple will be dedicated. We read in Isaiah 28:11, "For with stammering lips and another tongue he will speak to these people." The Lord tells us that as if he was stuttering, he will be repeating information. That way God will establish patterns to guide us. In other words, what was will be. He also tells us that he will speak to us like in a strange language. So it's important that we pray and use discernment as we reach conclusions, but any conclusion we reach cannot contradict any part of the Word of God. A brief reminder: we use the structure of the Jewish calendar so that the year goes from September of one year to September of the next year. We use the original Hebrew calendar that begins with the day of Adam and Eve's fall, which is day 1, month 1, which is the month of Tishri, of the year 1, of the count until the second coming. In Exodus 12, God changed the beginning of the year from Tishri 1 to Nisan 1. In the calendar, Nisan 1 is the opposite to Tishri 1. That is actually a prophecy that announced not only a new beginning of the year, but a new beginning for humanity. It's the first code, and it is an amazing mystery that we will study in the future. Now that we know that the Bible predicts that the third temple will be dedicated on the year 2030, which goes from September 9th, 2029 through September 27th of 2030, we ask, did the Lord give us enough information to calculate on which day it will be dedicated? The answer is yes. God left not only patterns to guide us, but he also left mathematical calculations that confirm the time of the dedication of the third temple down to a precision of 2 consecutive days. Let's begin by examining a pattern that highlights the significance of patterns in unraveling mysteries. Initially, we will study the pattern of the day of the destruction of the first and second temple. We read in 2 Kings 25, 8 through 9. And in the fifth month, which is the month of Ab, on the seventh day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord and the king's house, all the houses of Jerusalem, that is, all the houses of the great, he burned with fire. Nebuchadnezzar became king of Babylon 3 weeks after the death of Nabopolassar, his father. According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, Nabopolassar died on August 16, 605 BC. The first year of Nebuchadnezzar began not earlier than September 605 BC. The 19th year began on September 586 BC and ended on September 586 BC. Ab 9 fell sometime in July, at least 2 months before Nebuchadnezzar's 19th year ended. Then we read in Jeremiah 52:12 through 13. Now, in the 5th month, again the month of Ab, on the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard who served the king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem. He burned the house of the Lord and the king's house, all the houses of Jerusalem, that is, all the houses of the great, he burned with fire. So we read in 2 Kings 25, 8 and 9 that Nebuzaradan came on Ab 7, and we read in Jeremiah 52:12 to 13 that he came on Ab 10. It's like seeing a circle and a rectangle. Which one is correct? The solution to the puzzle is proposed by the rabbinic tradition that sets the day Nebuzaradan enters and left Jerusalem from Ab 7 to Ab 10. The temple was destroyed in Ab 9. We read in the Mishnah Ta'anit, chapter 4, 6, on the ninth day of Av, it was decreed to our ancestors that they would not enter the land. The first and the second temples were destroyed. The city of Beitar was taken, and the city of Jerusalem was plucked. When one enters the month of Av, he decreases his joy. But I will propose a complementary solution. I propose that both are right. How, you ask? The solution to the puzzle of what seems to be two different dates, in this case, let's propose two different geometric forms, is that what is described on 2 Kings and in Jeremiah is equivalent of looking to two perspectives of the same geometric object. In other words, we see a circle and we see a rectangle, so it seems different, right? In this case, they are both looking at a cylinder, again, just from two different perspectives. Remember that God said that He will speak to us like in a strange language. From the perspective of 2 Kings, we read that Nebuzaradan entered the city on Av 7. Although this picture of Jerusalem may not be exact, we know that there were likely several walls surrounding different parts of the city. And it's likely that the most vulnerable wall was breached first. Here we see the city of Jerusalem and the walls protecting the city. But there is a moat and a wall surrounding the city of David, where the palace of the kings, the house of the great, and the temple were situated. But Jeremiah saw it from the perspective of Jerusalem's center of power, the palace. He understood that as long as the palace of the king was not taken, they could rebuild Jerusalem still as a Jewish city. But if the palace fell, then that would be the fall of Jerusalem. So we read in Jeremiah 6, 4 and 5, prepare war against her, against Jerusalem. Arise and let us go up at noon. That's the daytime of Ab 9. Woe to us, for the day goes away, for the shadows of the evening are lengthening. Arise and let us go by night, that would be already Ab 10, and let us destroy her palaces. That verse indicates that the destruction of that area of the temple and palaces, which was the most protected areas, began on the daytime of Ab 9, right? Then we read that the destruction was finished with the destruction of the palaces, which were the centers of power, and the king's throne on the night of Ab 10. If the palace falls, Jerusalem falls. Jeremiah clarifies that on Ab 10, the palaces were burned. But why Jeremiah didn't mention the temple when he described that the palaces were burned on the night of Ab 10? That is because the temple was already destroyed on the daytime of Ab 9 before the evening began. Remember that God said that He will talk to us with stammering lips, repeating events, creating patterns. Those patterns guide us and help us understand His word and prophecies. The synchronicity of the dates of the destruction of the temple is confirmed by the historian Josephus. So we read in the War of the Jews, Book 6, Chapter 4, Section 5. So Titus retired into the tower of Antonia. This is about the destruction of the second temple, right? So Titus retired into the tower of Antonia and resolved to storm the temple the next day, early in the morning, with his whole army, and to encamp around about the holy house. But as for that house, God had, for certain, long ago doomed it to fire. And now that fatal day has come. According to the revolution of ages, it was the 10th day of the month of Lu, of Ab, about which it was formerly burned by the kings of Babylon, although these flames took their rise from the Jews themselves and were occasioned by them. For upon Titus retiring, the seditious Jews laid still for a little while and then attacked the Romans again, when those that guarded the holy house fought with those that quenched the fire that was burning the inner court of the temple. But those Romans put the Jews to flight and proceeded as far as the holy house itself. at which time one of the soldiers, without staying for any orders, and without any concern or dread upon him at so great an undertaking, and being hurried on by a certain divine fury, snatched somewhat out of the materials that were on fire, and being lifted up by another soldier, he set off fire to a golden window through which there was a passage to the rooms that were round about the holy house, on the north side of it. As the flames were upward, the Jews made a great clamor, such as so mighty an affliction required. So we have in this picture from the templemount.org, we have a brief description of what happened where they attacked and entered the temple. So we read that Titus decided to storm the temple the next day. That would be early in the morning on Ab 10. But on Ab 9, one of the Roman soldiers, hurried by a certain divine fury, set fire to a golden window, and the fire went upwards the temple. So the Jews made a great clamor, such as so mighty an affliction required. It was almost evening, so Titus decided to wait until the morning to destroy the temple. But the soldiers didn't wait and destroyed the temple on Ab 9. So that pattern confirms that the destruction of both the first and the second temple began before the evening, so it was still Ab 9. Question: just like the date of the destruction of the first and second temples coincide, did God leave us a pattern to follow based on the dates that the former temples were dedicated, to guide us as to the date of the dedication of the third temple? Yes, He did. But there's a problem, because there were two temple dedications on two different dates. And if that is not enough, there is one more complication. AD 2030 is a Jewish leap year, and now we have to contend with two possible months for the pattern of the second temple: Adar I and Adar II, or Adar. I will explain why. To solve the mystery and establish the pattern, let's first identify the three possible dates, then identify which one of the three is confirmed by God. It just happens that God confirms one of the dates by solving another mystery. We read in 1 Kings 6:37 through 38. In the 4th year of Solomon, the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid in the month of Ziv, which is the month of Liar, and in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, which is the month of Sheshvan, which is the 8th month, the house was finished in all its details and according to all the plans. So he was 7 years building it. Then we read in 1 Kings 8, 1 and 2. Now Solomon assembled the elders of Israel and all the heads of the tribes, the chief fathers of the children of Israel, to King Solomon in Jerusalem, that they may bring up to the temple the ark of the covenant of the Lord from the city of David, which is in Zion. Therefore all the men of Israel assembled with King Solomon at the feast in the month of Ethanim, that would be Tishri, which is the 7th month. The construction of the first temple ended on the month of Sheshvan, but this was not the time of the dedication. Finishing touches and the making of furniture took about 11 more months. So finally the Ark of the Covenant was moved to the temple in the month of Tishri for its dedication. Then we read on 2 Chronicles 7, 8 through 10. At that time, Solomon kept the feast 7 days. That would be the Feast of Tabernacles. And all Israel with him, a very great assembly from the entrance of Hamath to the brook of Egypt. On the 8th day, which is the day of Shemini Atzeret, or the 10th code, when we'll study that, they held a sacred assembly, for they observed the dedication of the altar 7 days, and the feast 7 days. On the 23rd day of the 7th month, he sent the people away to their tent. The first thing we read is that when the first temple was finished, the ark was brought to the temple from the city of David in Zion. So we must conclude that the temple was built outside of the city of David, outside of Zion. And the mystery is, today, where exactly in the Temple Mount could the third temple be built? Remember that the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque are currently on the Temple Mount. Scenario analysis suggests that it will be built in the northeast corner of the Temple Mount because it seems like the only available space for such construction. This we're going to study in detail in the future. Probably with an entrance through the gate of the tribes, and maybe with also an access through the Golden Gate, which is not far and to the south. Please remember that this is me saying it, not the Bible. Solomon's temple was about 9 by 27 meters, so there is enough space there for a temple the size of Solomon's temple. So the Golden Gate is currently sealed, right? And facing a cemetery, which may defile the priest entering through the gate, but there's a solution for that. You can put an elevated entrance bypassing all the cemetery. So we read that Solomon celebrated the dedication of the temple for 14 days plus 1. Celebrated for 7 days from Tishri 8 to Tishri 14. There seems to be no mention of celebrating Yom Kippur on Tishri 10, but probably they did. Then he continued the celebrations through the 7-day festival of tabernacles from Tishri 15 to Tishri 21. And later he held the sacred assembly mandated on the 8th day, which is Tishri 22, Shemini Atzareh. Finally, on the 23rd day of Tishri, Solomon sent everybody back to their tents. Based on the patterns that God left us, if the pattern to follow is the dedication of the first temple, then the third temple should be dedicated for 15 days starting Tishri 8, 2030. Therefore, the 8th day of Tishri will be September 16 after sundown or September 17 before sundown of 2029. Remember that all the date conversions are not my opinion. They are based on mathematical calendar converters. You can check Harvard's math department calendar converters or the Hebrew one, hepcal.com, or others. There are several and they all yield the same dates. I will pin 2 calendar converter URLs in the comments in case you want to confirm them or play with them. For more information, go to session 2, where I also mention the limitations of the calendar converters. So if the first temple is the pattern to follow, then the dedication of the temple will begin on the 8th day of Tishri again, which is September 16 after sundown to September 17 before sundown, 2029, and continues through Tishri 22, which is September 30, 2029 after sundown through October 1st before sundown. This is possibility number 1, but there's more. Maybe it's not the first temple, but the second temple that creates the pattern. Let's explore that possibility. We read in Ezra 6, 15 through 16. Now, the second temple was finished on the 3rd day of the month of Adar, which was in the 6th year of the reign of King Darius. Then the children of Israel, the priests and the Levites, and the rest of the descendants of captivity celebrated the dedication of the house of God with joy. So, if the second temple is the pattern, then the third temple should be dedicated on Adar III of 2030. But there's a twist. The year 2030 is a Jewish leap year. Remember from our study of the calendars that when there is a leap year, the month of Adar becomes Adar II or Adar, so the celebrations are moved to Adar II. For example, the festival of Purim is normally celebrated on the 14th day of Adar, but on leap years it is celebrated on the 14th day of Adar II or Adar. So in our calendar, the dedication should occur either March 7 after sundown or March 8 before sundown of 2030. But there's one more possibility. There is a very strong probability that a third option is the more accurate. This third option is that the dedication of the third temple will actually occur on the 3rd day of the month of Adar I and not on the 3rd day of the month of Adar II, because there's a pattern that when calculated using code 10 lands us exactly, and I mean exactly, on the 3rd day of Adar of the year 2030, not the 3rd of Adar of the 3rd day of Adar II. When we analyze and decode code 10, we will return to this calculation and confirm that the third day of the month of Adar I seemed to be the right day in the pattern. Be patient because it will take some time for us to get to the codification of code 10. In the book, the pattern is clear. In any event, that outcome surprised me greatly because I didn't expect it. However, the pattern that predicts the dedication of the third temple in Adar I is incredibly obvious once you see it. Again, I cannot get into that calculation on this session because we will have to at least go over code 10 in great detail. But we will confirm this when we get to that study. So under this scenario, the dedication of the third temple should occur after sundown of February 5 or before sundown of February 6, 2030. So this is a graph showing all the possible dates, right? So we have the year of 2030 beginning September 9 of 2029 and then September 27, 2030. The first possibility, the first pattern to follow would begin the dedication of the temple on Tishri 8, which is September 16 or September 17 of 2029. The second option or second possibility, it would be the second temple pattern on the third day of Adar II or Adar, which would be March 7 or March 8 of 2030. But then we have the special second temple pattern, which is the third day of Adar I, which is February 5 or February 6 of 2030. And that's the more likely possibility. That day, that exact day, also marks the beginning of the last generation. God left all the information in the Bible. In the next session, we will go in detail over another mystery, the 6,000-year countdown from the fall of Adam and Eve to the dedication of the third temple. See you in the next session.